Hello and welcome back to another episode of Tilki Taka, a Chelsea FC podcast. I am your host Felipe, and with me today is my co-host John. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right. Could be worse. Could be better. Could be worse.
That's the name of the game, John. So today we are going to be doing our Chelsea versus Arsenal recap episode. Lots to discuss. After that, we will talk about how some players have been performing under Rosenior. Then we'll get into the Chelsea finance report that came out recently from UEFA. And then lastly, we will look at the Champions League draw from earlier this week before looking ahead to Villa on Wednesday. So before I pass it over to you, John, let me just go ahead and read out the starting lineup here. So we started with Sanchez in goal, per usual. Had Reece James at right back, Chalobah and Sarr at center back, Hato at left back, Caicedo and Santos in the pivot, Neto on the wing, Palmer on the wing, Enzo Fernandez in the middle, and João Pedro leading us up top. So why don't you go ahead and just give me your thoughts on the game overall?
I mean, I feel like the game was exactly what everyone expected the game to be. If you would ask me kind of my pessimistic view of what the game was going to end up and what it was going to look like last week, it would have been, Arsenal keep things kind of slow, probably play better than us, still only score from corners. Someone gets a red card on Chelsea. There's a flash of something, but it's not enough, and we still lose. It's not what you want, but that's just kind of what I was expecting going into it. And like clockwork, Arsenal score off of the two corners, like typical. We score our own, which is nice. Reece James, GOAT, of course. And then, Pedro Neto gets another red card off of the second yellow. I thought we actually looked better than Arsenal, even down 10 men. Like, not better, but it didn't look like we were missing it, quite frankly. Still not enough to pull it through and lose a much needed point, or rather probably give Arsenal two more than we.
Yeah, I'm totally with you there. It was definitely disappointing to let Arsenal get all 3 points. I think if you'd offered anyone a draw at the Emirates before the game started, they would have taken you up on it on the spot. Overall, I think I was relatively happy with the performance. I mean, we're talking about Arsenal. I hate to say it, but they're probably the best team in the world, them or Bayern. And they're just simply not an easy team to play against, especially away from home. I thought the first 30 to 40 minutes, we were looking really bad when we were trying to build up from the back, and Arsenal were just using the high press. We looked all over the place. Rob was not playing confidently. We've seen how he can perform from the back playing out, and we know he kind of can do it. But today was one of those days where we did not get the best version of Rob Sanchez, unfortunately. Thankfully, he didn't give up anything that led to a goal. I mean, that could have changed the whole game. I think there was a moment in the fourth minute where if we had conceded right there, I think the game would have ended on the spot. So thankfully that wasn't the case. Then from minutes like 40 to 65, 70, I thought we were actually really good. There were long periods of time where we were playing better than Arsenal. Not to say we were the better team by any means, but we were definitely playing better, and that really does matter when it was such a close game. And then obviously after the red card, the game was kind of chalked at that point. There was really no hope to win, even though we did get some chances, I'm going to say. But I'm with you. I didn't think we looked worse at 10 men, which is shocking. But then again, if you remember the game at Stamford Bridge, we went down 10 men and looked better the entire second half than them. I think for me, and I don't want to be this whole like referee conspiracist podcast by any means, but the refereeing was just like atrocious. And I'm not saying it was bad like minute 1 to minute 90, but those two Chelsea corners that were no calls were ridiculous. I mean, I could like probably instill the still picture image on this podcast of the exact play I'm thinking of, the second corner kick, where they were all over JP and Raya's punching him in the head. It doesn't make sense how that's not a penalty. The two arms around the shoulder are already a pen, and then the punch in the face is a pen. I don't know how you can have two distinct acts that could be penalties and neither one get checked by the VAR. And the Rice one, the first one, like thankfully we scored a goal on the very next corner, so it kind of like nets out. But again, it's just like, it's a penalty that should be called. It's ridiculous that these things aren't even going to VAR, or VAR do like a quick scan and check it and clear it. I thought besides that, like the referee wasn't terrible. If anything, they made some bad calls against Arsenal too, like when they prevented those counterattacks. That was definitely to Chelsea's benefit. But again, that's more showing that it's like poor refereeing at large and not just like favoritism. Because again, I don't think it's favoritism. I think it's bad officiating at the end of the day. And, we were talking about this right before we turned the camera on, John, but like VAR got introduced to prevent very easy misses, right? Like it's supposed to increase the accuracy of the calls and catch things that are like blatant. So like dives and clear penalties that are just getting missed, and basically be like a second layer of safety on the refereeing performance. And it's just not doing its job because one, it's just like not choosing the right moments to take over or to take over games, right? Like we've seen VAR ruin games, and we've seen the lack of VAR intervention also ruin games. It's just like its utilization is not appropriately being used by the prem. And then frankly, there's still a human component to all of this, right? Like there's still a group of guys behind a screen making the decisions, and the same way that there's different quality from ref to ref, every VAR group has a different quality to it as well. So it's just ridiculous that these calls were missed. I don't really have an issue losing to Arsenal in a vacuum if we were just the worst performing team and they beat us. But it hurts to know that if they had called that second penalty, we probably go up 2-1 and it's a whole different game. We probably don't leave here with a red card. We have Pedro Neto for Villa next week. It's like a total kind of like loop, right? So it is just a bit ridiculous. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on the VAR you want to share, but
no, I mean, exactly. And maybe we're just paying so much more attention to the refereeing because we were sold this vision of VAR that it would fix everything. And so there's a lot more scrutiny now about issues that maybe wouldn't feel as cut and dry in the past for us. But I agree. There seems to be even less consistency now than pre-VAR, and it's frustrating. And it's easy as a biased fan, admittedly, to be like, oh, we're getting jobbed all the time. But like you mentioned, you look at those two stills from the two corners, and it's like, what are they looking at? I don't know how you fix it. If you're, especially the corners in general, but if you're the PGMOL, I don't know what you do. But clearly something has to change because people are very upset, and something needs to be addressed to make things more consistent, I believe. I don't know what you do.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think what I really want to articulate here is that I'm not anti-VAR. I'm actually very pro-VAR. I think the introduction of VAR is good overall. It makes it so that really big errors are not going to get missed. But I mean, it's the same as what everyone's thinking online, right? Like it's just applied inconsistently, and the inconsistent application of all these rules across this myriad of different games just makes it so frustrating where a handball is given in one game that decides the game, and then in the very next game, that same handball is a no call and also could decide the game, right? In one game, there's a tackle that's very blatantly gets the ball and it's a no call, and then in the next game, the same exact thing, and it's a pen or a red. It's just, again, there's a human component to it that's really what's causing all these issues. But even then, if the PGMOL, I think, really cracked down on refereeing standards and just really got things shaped up, I think we could get a much better product both from the officials and from the VAR. So again, I'm not trying to get rid of VAR. I know there's a lot of people who just romanticize the old days of soccer where if the ball was in the net and the flag wasn't up, that's already a goal. I'm okay with things that are incorrectly being called on the field being overruled by VAR. It's just they're not doing their job to the standard they should be doing, and it's really frustrating as a fan, especially when you're in the back end of it. And I think even when you're on the better end of it, you're simply thinking, man, these refs stink. I'm glad my team got a win out of this, but I'd actually just prefer for this to be better overall.
Yeah, I think very well said. It feels like every time we turn the TV on and watch the game, it's like, what are we gonna get today, right? What's the latest iteration of VAR shenanigans? I just want to know what to expect.
Yeah. Well, so moving on from this referee rant, which I think is well deserved, and hopefully people kind of feel the same way. I still do want to just harp on the game more. We kind of talked about the overall picture here, but give me some of your more specific takeaways or player performances. I'm happy to discuss individuals.
Yeah, I think for me, I was very pleased with Hato. Traditionally maybe a tough assignment coming in against Saka, and maybe he's off his game a little bit this season as well. But I thought he performed brilliantly. Honestly, he defensively very solid. I was very very confident in him, and he got forward a bit. There wasn't any game saving play necessarily. A couple of more interceptions maybe that you point to that seemed more impactful. But for more or less, right, it was pretty quiet down the left side. So I was very, very pleased.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely echo that. I was surprised to see Hato start. I thought there were kind of reasonable shouts for Gusto to start again. He is just a more experienced player in the Prem, and he does have a lot of the physical tools you would want for just a pacey fullback. But I echo what you said. I mean, I thought Hato played super well. I thought at least defensively, he was not a liability by any means. Just about managed to do his job, wasn't really fouling a lot. So it wasn't a day where Saka couldn't beat him, but he was fouling nonstop. It really wasn't that. He just really held his ground pretty well. There was even one play late. I think we were down to 10 men at this point where Arsenal kind of cooked up a set piece. I think they passed it down to the wing, passed it kind of up back to the top, towards the center field, and then tried to slide a ball into the box, into a very wide open space, and Hato came out of nowhere and just took it out. Super impressive for me because I've seen us get got by that play before. So I was genuinely surprised that somebody got there, and the fact that it was Hato, I was definitely impressed. I thought there was a little bit to be desired offensively. I'm really glad that he's a young, fast, athletic player because he has a lot to give in the team, right? Like somebody who can just like bomb up and down the flanks all game is like a valuable player. I thought he played conservatively on offense. I don't know how deep his bag is on offense, frankly, but if you rewatch, he wasn't like looping in a bunch of crosses or, waiting for overlaps or underlaps. He really was just like receiving the ball kind of deep on the wing and then passing it back, which I think is kind of fair, right? Like he's making the transition from the Eredivisie. He hasn't had like a ton of minutes in Chelsea, and he hasn't been playing when he does play against like top tier teams. He gets to play a lot of championship teams or Leeds or, whoever it is. Obviously, you're playing Arsenal, who I would almost say are probably the best defense in the world. Like I understand the hesitation to be like too aggressive with it. So I'm not going to fault him for that, but it was just something that stood out for me. I didn't notice he was like playing back a lot. But honestly, this is obviously my favorite player, but I want to talk about him a little bit. I thought Reece was incredible today. He's incredible almost every day. I mean, I'm going to put this out right now. I mean, that's the best right back in football when he's healthy. I don't think there's any conversation to be had. I know for a long time it was a Trent versus Reece conversation. It's not a Trent versus Reece conversation anymore. Hakimi versus Reece, like, I don't want to hear it. Hakimi plays in League One, like, have fun. Reece genuinely is, when he's healthy, an incredible player. In my opinion, the best player in our team when he's fully fit and he's on his day. But I thought he was great today. Some of the tackles he made, I thought he was beat, and then he would just come out of a spin with the ball. I was like generally floored because sometimes you forget. I don't know. Sometimes there's a couple quiet games and you kind of forget who Reece is, but then you remember why Rafael and Vini and all these players say he's the best player they've ever played against. I mean, this guy's genuinely probably one of the best fullbacks I've ever seen in my life, and I'm thrilled to have him at Chelsea football team. And he was great today, but couldn't get us the win, unfortunately.
Though, yeah, it goes without saying, goated, amazing player. Unfortunately, with your little monologue there, very big if. When he's healthy, if he's healthy, I think we're all just happy that he's, putting in 90s for us.
Yeah, I think I'm starting to get a lot more optimism with the more perpetually injured players. I think that in the last year or two, I know we've had setbacks with Lavia and we've had setbacks with Isugo and we've had setbacks with Palmer, but it just really does appear to me that there is more of a plan and more of an emphasis on the medical side of this whole thing and making sure when players come back, they come back healthy and they can string games together, or if not, they can't and they don't, right? We're not forcing it. So Reece hasn't really been hurt that much this year. Fofana hasn't really been hurt that much this year. And these were two of our more injury-prone players the last two seasons. Obviously, we're getting Lavia back now. He got his first minutes in who knows how long. I know Isugo's still out. I know Palmer's still managing the minutes. Like, I get it. It's not perfect. But at the end of the day, these teams have limited amounts of depth. Some players can play through the injury to an extent. But I do have some optimism in the medical department right now where I do think when players come back from longer injuries, I feel much more comfortable that they're not going to just regress into a cycle of injuries, which I suppose is a good segue to saying that Lavia had a short little cameo today, but was pretty tidy. I mean, Arsenal at this point in the game were up a man and probably just sitting back. So it did give Lavia a lot of room to operate. But when he played, I thought he was pretty good. And, I'm just excited to get more depth in our midfield and get more minutes out of Lavia. I think he can be a really good player for us. I think he provides something we don't really have anywhere else on the team, which is just the ability to carry the ball forward. And he's pretty elusive under pressure in the backfield, honestly. I think it's just worthwhile to have, especially if Rob's playing hospital balls all day. But so no, it'll be good to have Lavia back.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, had a nice little cameo. Saying the environment may be a little bit different. Pulled out a nifty little move kind of in the first couple minutes he was on. I don't know if you remember this. Wriggling past two guys in the midfield, go line by himself. It was great. Hope to see more of that.
Yeah, and the last player I want to talk about here, I thought João Pedro had a great game. I mean, this dude was getting absolutely dogged all game. There were definitely fouls that could have been called by the ref on some of these deep kicks by Rob against Gabriel and Saliba. But JP played, I thought, pretty well. I mean, we'll get into this in the next section because he's a player we're going to focus on a little bit in this episode. But he's just been playing really well overall. We have had the number 9 curse at Chelsea and just years after years after years of buying strikers who are just not up to par and just don't fit the bill and kind of set us back. And JP really just feels like the first one we've bought in a long time where you're yeah, I can see this guy's good. He's performing on the field. I don't have to bank on potential. It's just he's producing and I still see room for growth. I still see him getting better. And as the cast around him improves too, I think it's going to bring a lot out of him. So we will get into that a little bit more in the next section. I do want to give him his flowers because I did think he was good today, but we will get into more specifics on his past couple performances here in a bit. What about you, John? Anyone else you want to talk about?
I think that's good. Still pretty disappointed with getting yet another red card. We talked about it quite a bit last week, so I don't know if we need to delve too far into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can spend a little bit of time talking about it if you want. There's a lot to talk about, but this is not something we could just push aside. I think people online are furious about this, which I think is completely fair. I'll give you a chance to speak first because I definitely have some thoughts here, but I know you do too, and you were the one that brought it up, so I'm gonna hand the floor over to you. Go ahead.
I just yet again a game which we were down, but still felt like we had a chance to come back. We were playing very positively. Points were just getting thrown out and burned up. I can't remember Rosenier's exact metaphor, but we're turning wins and draws into losses because we were playing down a guy. And you hate to see it happen to Neto, right? Normally very positive. I don't know if I feel like he didn't really have the greatest game today, regardless. You hate to see it happen. Maybe it's because I've been seeing some conspiracy theories online that he didn't realize that he'd gotten the first yellow card, so that's why he went for the tackle that ended up getting the second one. Regardless, so the amount of cards that we've gotten in the past year, 2 years, 3 years for dissent it's just insane. I just don't see the thought process at all. And maybe there is no thought process. And at that point, maybe this is just what you have to deal with having a relatively young team that tries to play with a lot of passion. But it clearly is not working. And Chelsea need to change something to address that, whether it be increasing fines or disciplinary actions. Because it has turned us from a team that should be solidly in the Champions League spots into one that might not even make the Conference League.
Yeah, I mean, it's the talk of the town, right? Chelsea just keep getting red cards. Internally in the Chelsea fan base, we know there's a lot of like dissent issues. To your point on your earlier comment, we now have 9 red cards this season, which is tied for Premier League record. And there's still 10 games to play. But it's what you said. This is a team that probably should be comfortably in the top 3 spots. And we're currently in 6th, looking into the top 5, vying for a Champions League spot because we just keep dropping points on these silly red cards. I get it. Like sometimes a red card does just happen, but getting 2 yellows and once for dissent, or making a stupid tackle, or, I even think earlier in the season when I think it was Chalobah made a tackle, I think this is the Man U game, Chalobah makes a tackle on the last player for Man U, so it's a red card in like the 5th minute. There is just so much more value in letting that be a goal and just playing 11 men the rest of the game. Like, I understand that soccer players are not sitting in some like conference room discussing the mathematical advantage of when to take a red card and when not to take a red card, but I feel like some of these are so obvious. And like, don't take a red card in the first like 5 minutes of the game. Like, you probably play better with 11 men. But yeah, long story short, the Reds have just about killed our season. We can get into this later when we're going to talk about the financial section of this all, but it really is super imperative that Chelsea make the Champions League this year. And it's starting to look like it's a longer shot than it was a couple weeks ago. And if we continue getting reds, it's going to be worse and worse for us. But even the yellows for dissent are really like out of control. It's like you said, there's no value in them. Like, for example, I'm very pro tactical fouls for yellow. Like, get me those all day long and I'll be cheering on the team. But the yellows for dissent have no value. And when we see something like today where Pedro Neto gets a second yellow and the first one from dissent and it costs him the game, it's pretty infuriating. And it has made the games less enjoyable to watch. I watch the kickoffs on the weekend. I look forward to the Chelsea game all weekend. And then when I kick off, one of the things that's lingering in the back of my mind every single game is, man, I really hope we don't get a red card this week. We've gotten a red card in just about 25% of the games this season, which is like unheard of, like genuinely unheard of. So like, yeah, of course it's costing us a viable position this season. It's something that probably won't happen again next season. And so it's like easy for us to build on for next year. But again, like Rosenior has to stomp out these dissent yellows. And it's something that obviously predates him. And people talk about the leaders in the locker room or the coach. And I mean, I simply do not know what the solution is here, because I don't think it's the manager yelling at the players. I don't think it's the captain getting less yellows. I just don't really know what the solution is. It's like there might not even be one. They just have to like individually stop making such dumb decisions. But yeah, it is pretty infuriating, and it's going to be really heartbreaking if we get to the end of the season and just barely miss out on these top 5 spots, and we look back and think, I don't even have to think about a missed ref call or a missed shot that went wide. I know we lost because of these reds. So it is heartbreaking as a fan. I'm hoping we end up in the top 5, obviously, and I can just put it out of mind and be like, haha, what a funny little season we had. Everything's up for grabs right now, so it's hard to digest this information not knowing how it's going to play out.
Yeah, and it could have, like you were alluding to, very, very big financial implications and kind of implications for the club as a whole.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to have a really, really consequential long-term effects if we don't make Champions League this year. And I did want to say one more thing. You mentioned a little conspiracy going around if Pedro Neto knew he had gotten the first yellow or not. I did see some conclusive evidence. He did in fact know, which just makes it even dumber that he did that diving challenge, because I personally don't think Martinelli was that much of a threat at that moment. But, it's hard to assess when you're sprinting full speed. But, I mean, it's really unacceptable to be getting a yellow 3 minutes after picking up your first and then getting sent off in the game. So with that, let's just move on here. So we'll just cover some of the results around the league this match week. Kind of assess where Chelsea are now. So on Friday, Villa dropped points to Wolves, which was a phenomenal result for anyone trying to get top 5. I think Villa grossly overperformed to begin the year. They're obviously sitting in 4th place right now. They were just like really overperforming their XG, and the last couple games they've been really underperforming their XG, so it's really just them crashing down to earth. And hopefully this trend continues, because if I'm going to be honest, the one team that it looks like Chelsea could beat out for the top 5 spots right now is probably Villa. So we do need them to keep dropping points, and we need to start getting some points ourselves. Liverpool won against West Ham 5-2. That was kind of an expected result. And then Man U beat Crystal Palace today. These Liverpool and Man U results are really not going Chelsea's way here, but you can't expect teams to drop points every week. But again, I just want to briefly touch on this Man U game where there was another ridiculous dodgy VAR call. Lacroix got caught pulling Cunha's shoulder at the edge of the box. And this is not like he wasn't pulling his shirt. It didn't even really look like he was pulling him on the shoulder. His hand was very clearly on his shoulder, but it didn't look like he was getting pulled back. And Cunha probably took 3 steps with this guy's hand on his shoulder, no issue. And then the second he got in the box, his legs just gave out. And so then the refs called a penalty for continuation, because apparently this transcended from outside the box into the box, which I'll be very honest, this is probably one of the only rules that I really cannot interpret well, is the continuation to the box. I always think it's just a point of contact right outside the box, but I know that continuation is a thing. I just really don't understand how it's enforced. So I would not be the best person to speak on this. So then the ref also gave a penalty for Dogso, which is denial of an obvious goal scoring opportunity. But again, even that wasn't super concrete or conclusive. Like, sure, Cunha was probably the furthest forward player, but Henderson had already come off his line to collect the ball, and Cunha was also relatively out wide. Like, I'm not saying he was all the way at the corner of the box, but he wasn't in a high XG position to score here. So obviously that let Man U tie the game, and Man U up 1-man against Crystal Palace was able to take the lead here. Again, just really, really poor officiating, I thought, or at least very subjective. You know, obviously you can assess these games however you want. Everyone's entitled to their opinion to an extent, but super subjective and really bad for Chelsea as we try to wrap up the season here. But so that transitions me to our next section here, John. I wanted to move away from the recent results and discuss how some of the players have been performing under Rosenior lately. I think there have been some clear winners since Rosenior took over, and I thought it would be good to give them their flowers. I don't know if you want to kick off this section first. If so, be my guest.
Yeah, I mean, I think the very clear winner, and probably very expected winner here, is Andre Santos. Wasn't he Strasbourg's player of the season last season? Played fantastic, a monster in League One. Really, okay, we'll come over, kind of immediate impact, and really it never felt like he found his way into the team. He wasn't fitting the profile that Maresca was looking for. And then once you know it, Rosenior comes in, his old coach, and then all of a sudden he's playing very consistently and he's playing very well. It doesn't seem like he puts a foot wrong. Okay, he has a couple of times. I think last game he might have forgotten to track a man on a corner, and it might have led to some struggles there. But in general, he's been great. He's actually playing, and I think he's really been a bright spot in our team. And part of the reasons why Rosenior's played very well and has had such a great record in the Premier League since.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were super excited when Andre came to Chelsea this summer, and a lot of people saw a lot of potential in him. He was Strasbourg's player of the year, like you said, so people were just really excited to get a high talent into the team in a position of need, mind you. People were super excited to see that he was going to spell Caicedo and spell Enzo and keep them fresh. And then Maresca just wouldn't play him, right? Wouldn't start him, would give him sparing minutes off the bench. I think people were really confused by that. I mean, I obviously still to this day don't really know why Maresca didn't want to give him more minutes, especially now that we've seen him play under Rosenior and we've seen him perform, so we know he's up to the level. It's not like this guy was doing terribly in practice and then just not getting minutes. He's performed and he's played. So yeah, I mean, he's obviously been a big winner of this Rosenior change. I have here that he started every game for Rosenior except for one. And in that game, I think he still played over 45 minutes. He came on a half. It's just a rating system, but it's worth something to some people. He's eclipsed a 7.0 rating in 4 of his last matches on FootMob, and he's eclipsed a 7.0 rating in 6 of his last 7 matches based on SofaScore, not counting today's game. So, I mean, I'm with you. I think he's been playing really well. I don't think he's been a liability for the most part, which I think that's almost how I judge any new player to Chelsea. If they come in, especially at a defensive role, are you just a liability? The less I have to think about you, probably the better. But I think his one-touch passing has been exquisite. I mean, he's had some ridiculous clips. Obviously, he was responsible for giving up that goal last week, but again, it's been 11 games. He's given up 1 goal. There's players who give up more, right? And he's overall been very, very positive, had a lot of impact. has not really provided any spell for Caicedo or Enzo because we've just shifted the formation around to a point where we're using three midfielders anyways, which is still a problem. Like I think this kind of like built up fatigue is going to catch up to us eventually, but that's obviously not Andre's fault. That's just like a coaching kind of tactical thing. But yeah, no, he's been great, and as a Brazilian, I've been like really excited to see him play so well because I've always thought he was really good. I think he has the chance to kind of get into this Brazil World Cup team, and I think he's earned it. So when Maresca wasn't playing him as much, I was worried he might just miss the chance from not getting enough minutes, and now that's really not going to be the case. He's kind of just killing it for us. Yeah, so obviously the other player that I think has stood out to everyone since Rosenior's come in is João Pedro. I think the clear kind of distinction here is that Rosenier's genuinely treating him as like a number 9. Maresca was really tinkering around with this idea of playing him as a 9, as a 10, putting him behind Delap, putting him as a 9 with Palmer, but he drops deep. And João Pedro kind of went through a slump there for a little bit. Obviously, he performed super well in the Club World Cup. I think he scored a couple goals to open the season, and then we just had a complete dry patch from him. And I really think it had a lot to do with the tactics and how he was being asked to play. But Rosinier's come in, played him as a number 9, given him the confidence to play. He's still done some dropping deep, but he's done a lot more leading the lines. And I think the big thing is he's not being asked to be a 10 or like this false 9. He does drop deep at times, but it's just like as part of his role more so as a kind of complementary fashion than a responsibility per se. So I have here some stats written down. So in the 6 Premier League matches under Rosenior so far, if we're counting per 90 stats, and this is again not including today's game, so João Pedro's touches are down from 44 to 37, and his passes are down from 26 to 19. And we've seen almost a 50% decrease in chances created. So again, really kind of moving out of that central drop-down location where he's getting more touches and kind of being a facilitator and holding up play to now just being an out-and-out striker, right? He's seen almost an 100% increase in shots per 90. He's at 3.2 per game, which if you get my striker over 3 shots per game, I'm pretty happy. Anything under that is a kind of suboptimal. He's seen a 50% increase in touches in the opponent box. His XG per 90 has gone up by 0.34. He's at like 0.7 right now, which is phenomenal. And this probably won't sound like a lot, but he's averaging 1 more run per game in behind per 90, which again, that's just like what we want. We want a guy to be running in behind so guys like Palmer and Enzo can just like thread the needle to them, right? And we get these high quality opportunities. And so again, not counting today's game, João Pedro has 6 goals and assists in 6 games under Rosenior in the Premier League specifically. And in the one game, he didn't get a goal or assist. He drew 2 penalties. So the dude's just been lights out since Rosenior's come in. We were talking about this in the Arsenal section, but he's given me a lot of confidence. I've gone through a lot of strikers now that have just not filled me with hope. I know Jackson actually performs pretty well, but he didn't fill me with confidence. Delap is really not up to the Chelsea standard. Timo Werner was not up to the Chelsea standard, and I love Timo Werner, but he just like was not it. Havertz was not good. I could go on and on. Lukaku came back and was not good. This is the first striker we've gotten where I'm like, yes, finally we found a striker. You know, he might not be a top 5 striker in the world, but I could see he's an exciting young talent who's producing now. I don't have to wait on potential, and I see the room for growth.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see where JP takes us.
Totally agree. He's been great. And I think the thing you mentioned that I really want to expand upon is I think, like you said, he seems to add something new that I haven't seen before in his game, like all the time. And so I feel like week after week, match after match day, maybe he's becoming more of a complete striker, and he's allowed to perform that role. Like I feel like today, he felt like a lot more of that target man up top that we would fire the long balls into. That maybe we've tried to envision Delap in that role before. I feel like there are a lot of opportunities where like, oh, he's getting in the chest, knocking it down, and then trying to create after that. Which is something you want your 9 to do, right? In order to hold up the ball and progress the play forward. It's not something I would have, you know, if I'm trying to really be reductive and force him in a box, right? That's not something I would have put in his locker, and it's great to see. It shows he's doing a lot, and he's doing it well.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the whole hold-up thing because I feel like when we bought the lap, that was like his profile. Like come in, chest it down at the midfield line, start a play, hold up. And frankly, JP's been better. Like it's just like I think it's night and day. I mean, I'm not a Delap hater by any means. I think he just doesn't have a lot to offer in what we want from a backup striker. And it's unfortunate because if we buy somebody, I'm rooting for them. And I hope he proves me wrong these last like 10, 15 games, whatever it is for the season. But it's just clear that like the one thing Delap was probably brought in to really do, JP's better than. And basically just about better at everything else except maybe ball striking. But even that, I think we could put up the vote and it'd be pretty subjective.
After that Napoli game.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking of too. I mean, that strike's ridiculous. So I think it could be a toss-up. But anyways, there's really no other players we're going to touch up on in this section. But I did want to say, like, obviously, João Pedro and Andre Santos are Brazilian, and it looks very likely that they're both going to get call-ups for the World Cup. So it'll be really exciting to see if they do. I think it's really exciting for any of our Chelsea players to get called up. It's a really good opportunity for them to play at the highest level. It's probably a huge pride for each individual player. I mean, it's probably like their dream as kids to represent their country for the World Cup. And all that's to say is, like, it's really exciting to see these players perform well for Chelsea and kind of earn what they're given. So that'll kind of segue us to the next section. So I'll just kind of lead us off here, John, and give you the opportunity to kind of voice your thoughts before we get into a bit of a discussion here. But so on Wednesday of this week, UEFA released its European club finance and investment landscape report, which revealed that Chelsea had the highest pre-tax loss in English football history and the second largest of all time at 342 million pounds of loss. That means that Chelsea have now surpassed a loss of 200 million in each of the last 3 seasons, and their 3-year rolling loss is 528 million pounds. Genuinely an eye-watering figure. Not only that, but Chelsea sources responded to the original release of the report by saying that a large part of the makeup of these losses were due to player and asset write-offs, as well as one-time cash items like for example, the 27 million pound fine assessed by UEFA earlier in the summer for breach of UEFA's financial rules, which we obviously already knew about. And these same sources state that this is not indicative of Chelsea's operating performance, nor is it indicative of their future financial health. And you know, just touching there, obviously we know that players, for example, like Sterling, were probably written off just recently or maybe even last year in anticipation of kind of the financial year closing. So it does kind of give some credence to what the Chelsea reporter is saying. The good news is that Chelsea's not expected to face any punishments from this gigantic loss as part of their agreement with UEFA this past summer when they were fined. There was an understanding that Chelsea did not need to stay below the loss limit necessarily. They just had to keep their losses in line with the business plan that was agreed upon in the summer. So the understanding is that even though this is an eye-watering figure, it's very likely in line with what they had agreed with UEFA, and because of that, we should not expect any additional punishments. And so I think there's a lot to discuss here. So let me just open up the floor to you, John, and let me hear your thoughts on this whole story and kind of your outlook on everything.
Yeah, I think the long and short of it, from my perspective, is that regardless of the footballing perspective, Chelsea's not a very well-run club, is what it seems like to me. And maybe this is, you know, a lot of the transition from the Abramovich era, and maybe this is the naivete of the American owners. But things aren't. It's just not clicking. And like you said, I think, you know, a lot of it is making these decisions, splashing a lot of money on it, whether it be for players or managers, it not working out, and then having to pay fees and, you know, pay wages of players that aren't playing. We had a whole bomb squad for a while of players we were paying not to play, and it's nonsensical. Eventually, we're going to run out of road. And it's going to have actual real footballing implications beyond this. Whether that means we have to sell more of our academy grads like we've done in the past to try and stay within some of these limits, or it's just, you know, with holding us back from actually pursuing a player that we might need. So, and maybe this is something that we'll fix with growth as the ownership gets better and we find an actual front of shirt sponsor, like you mentioned, and can take plans to fix this. You mentioned that we're following this business plan with UEFA, and that's one of the main reasons we're not having greater implications from this ridiculous loss of funds. But so we might be on the path to a better change, and this is all one-offs. But clearly it's indicative of some degree of either rot.
I think the word you're looking for is
ignorance.
Incompetence.
Incompetence, yeah, sure. It's awful, right? I mean, you know, if I'm an investor in Chelsea as a business, I look at this and I'm like, what the fuck were you doing? What was your plan coming into this? Because clearly, if you had one, it was not well thought out at all.
It's definitely devastating to see Chelsea bleeding in a pre-tax loss here. It's obviously indicative of just a poorly run team. I really give a lot of benefit of the doubt to the owners and the sporting directors. It probably is very hard to come in and just like take over a business you don't really know much about. They've done a really bad job doing that, right? Because if you don't know anything about a business, you should probably defer to people who do, but they've tried to kind of clear house and set up their own stuff, and that has really been bad, I think, at large for Chelsea as an organization. Hopefully this is accurate reporting, that it is just kind of like one-time losses and things they want to clear off the books in this calendar year, but I'm definitely skeptical. I think Chelsea have just done a lot of bad business lately. I mean, the one that comes to mind is no front of shirt sponsor for basically 2 years. That's $80 million conservatively down the drain. And then since Clear Lake took over, we've had Potter, we've had Pochettino, we've had Maresca, all who we've had to buy out of contracts. That is probably conservatively another $40 million down the drain. So we're talking $120 million in what, 3 years? Like just truly ridiculous sums of money being spent. And then not to mention some of the player trading. This one I think is more like touch and go. I'm kind of on board with the player trading model to an extent. Like I do see it as like a viable cash flow opportunity, but there's players we're just buying at like ludicrous valuations and then trying to sell, or we're just buying too many players. It's too many dart throws, you know? I think with young players, it is very much like a dart throw. Like you buy an 18-year-old prospect from Argentina or like the third division of Germany or something, and like you really don't know what you're gonna get, right? So I understand throwing darts out and trying to hit on like I get the business model, right? Like I've been involved in this for long enough where I get that it's better to buy a guy for 10 million and he becomes your $100 million player on low wages than to buy a $100 million player. So I get it. I get what the model is. I don't think it's been executed super well because we just get to games like today where at the beginning of the season, if you had asked me, I'd be like, wow, look at Chelsea's bench. Like, this looks really good compared to last year. Like, I'd pull up last year's lineup and be like, wow, that's a ridiculous bench. Like, that's really bad. I can't believe I thought that was good. But then I get to today and I look at our bench today and I'm like, man, this bench kind of stinks. Like, who's on this bench that's going to like come in and change this game? Like, it's not going to be Delap. Garnacho, for all his faults, I don't think it's that bad, frankly. But like, it's probably not him. And then we have one midfielder in Lavia. The rest of the bench is 4 defenders and a goalie. It's just like the model is not flawed, but the execution of the model is definitely lacking. And then frankly, I think this is by far our biggest issue. And it's one I don't have a solution for. And I don't think people have a solution for this. It's just like a talking point that's like incessantly going to be in conversations because until something changes, it's going to be like the most important talking point for Chelsea fans and the ownership, which is the stadium. Man U Stadium sits over 30,000 more people than the Chelsea Stadium. Stamford Bridge only sits like 42,000 people. Something in that ballpark, 40 to 45,000 people. It's like much smaller than rival stadiums. Like the Emirates is way bigger. Tottenham Stadium's way bigger. The City Stadium way bigger. The Etihad. Old Trafford's much bigger. Like all the top 6, we are the smallest top 6 club in terms of stadium. And it's really unacceptable because this is like the one thing that is going to be a sticking point for Chelsea. It is going to be very hard for them to either increase the size of Stamford Bridge, which I think is not the most likely scenario here, or get the stadium moved. I think the pitch owners are going to make it incredibly difficult. And while they might have merits in like denying any proposals, they are going to be holding Chelsea back. Like this team needs to move into a stadium that is relative size to its peers. It needs to be in that 70 to 80,000 threshold size. It has to be. It has to bring in that kind of match day revenue, or else in the not so distant future, it's going to be an issue. Like I'll read off some numbers here in a sec, but like Chelsea are slowly pulling away from all their main rivals in the Prem as the ones kind of drawing in the least amount of money consistently due to size and other reasons. And you know, it's okay in the short term, and it was probably okay before there were financial rules in place. But now that there's a lot of financial rules in place in both the Prem and in UEFA, it's going to get to a point where Chelsea's going to have to catch up to these rivals. They're not going to have a choice. So the stadium is a huge point. Let me read out some numbers here for you. So Chelsea brought in $511 million of revenue this past year. City, for example, brought in 746, and Liverpool brought in 744 million. So 200 million more in a year. Chelsea were actually second in broadcast revenue this year, but that's only because of the Club World Cup. City beat them. But of course, that is a whole extra competition Chelsea have to participate in to kind of crack the upper echelon. You know, Chelsea's big thing with the model, right? We'll talk about the model probably a lot on this podcast, just from the fact that it's always coming up, right? As we buy and sell players, it's always going to come up. As the team underperforms, it'll come up. Like we'll just talk about it probably ad nauseum. But for all the conversation of Chelsea building a young, inexpensive team to compete, Chelsea have the most expensive squad in the world right now. And I'm talking about like players in the playing squad, like not like guys in the bomb squad, not guys out on loan. Like this is playing squad. Chelsea have the most expensive squad in the world, according to UEFA. And Chelsea also have the 3rd most expensive team in the Prem and the 6th most expensive team in the world. And this figure could be deflated because of just like the large volume of players we do have under contract that don't play for Chelsea. But again, all of these financial implications kind of tie in together at the end of the day, right? Like if you're just paying a ton of guys who don't play for Chelsea, maybe that's money that's better spent not buying a prospect that never plays in your squad that you sell for a very minor profit. Maybe you should have just held on to that cash. So again, it's probably some amount of inexperience, probably some amount of incompetence. It is very sad to see Chelsea kind of be in the back end of all these conversations because I do think down the road it's going to have major implications. And one of the things that, again, we were talking about this a little bit early in the Arsenal section is that it's really more important than ever to make Champions League this year, seeing these numbers. Like Chelsea need that revenue from Champions League. Honestly, like critical for them. Looking at these reports, but it's just clear that the club is not bringing enough money to compete with like the upper echelon of Prem teams and like the Real Madrids and Bayerns of the world. And like that has to change, whether it's making huge player sales, which is probably something Chelsea don't want to do, given those are going to be their starters or most exciting prospects. And so one of like the best revenue streams we can secure is just making Champions League. Europa League won't cut it. Conference League won't cut it. It has to be Champions. And right now that's looking really dicey.
Yeah, can't say it too much better. Like eventually this will make us less competitive and potentially uncompetitive, purely because you need the players to compete. And maybe it would be different if we're hitting on our dart throws. I mean, what are the examples of the model really working? Esteval, I guess, Andre. But if you were to think about like our best players, I guess we got Cole Palmer at a little bit of a discount because we got him before he really popped off. But Caicedo, we bought at top of the market. Enzo, we bought at the top of the market. Reece, homegrown, which, I mean, good for the investment in Cobham. But, I mean, we haven't had that scenario where you buy the guy for $10,000 and then he becomes $100,000, millions of pounds out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best example of the model working is like to date, maybe Renato Vega, who we bought for like $12 million and sold a season later for 30, maybe it was 24, I think, because they had to sell him again. So we kind of doubled our profit. I'll take that every day of the week, right? But there's players who like Dacho Fofana, who we've sat on for like 3 years and are going to probably make a loss on, or David Washington, who we've sat on for 3 years and we're probably going to take a huge loss on. And that's just while they eat up wage, right? So
yeah,
I do believe in the model, but it's just like the model has to pull through for me first, you know?
I guess so. I don't really love them. I get the idea that if you churn through these players, potentially you make some degree of profit. But I just feel like the margins aren't there, right? Like the real value of the model is when you get the guy who can actually perform for your team, in my opinion. And so we made $20 million on Vega. With the risk involved, I'm just not sure if it's worth it for the heights that Chelsea's trying to reach. Like that level works great if you're Brighton, not to be disparaging, but like, no, we were trying to be the best team in the world. We're trying to win the Champions League. And so churning through these players, I feel like just leads to more roster dissatisfaction and a lack of cohesion.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think there's pros and cons to the player trading model. I think some people are on board. Some people like absolutely despise it. But honestly, just looking at the numbers in front of me here and seeing how much Chelsea lack in revenue compared to their peers, I almost kind of get needing to risk money on these investments to churn out the revenue on the back end. Like I kind of get it that you need to take that risk, but what they really need to do is build the infrastructure to make the stadium better and bring in more matchday revenue, sell more jerseys, better licensing deals, more partnerships, front of shirt sponsor on a long-term contract, right? Like there's way more things before the player trading model that they need to shore up for me to then be like, hey, congrats, you've done your job. Like I'm proud of you guys. But until then, I mean, the player trading model is kind of just going to stick around. I don't think it's actually ever going to disappear, frankly.
Yeah, it's like you just mentioned. Let's take the guaranteed money, right? It's not a guaranteed exactly, but there's way less risk involved with getting a front of shirt sponsor instead of just like passing up on even at its lower end, right? Like 45 million pounds a year.
Yeah, so let's just close up this section. The only other thing I wanted to note from this UEFA report, by the way, super interesting report. You know, I assume we're not gonna have many listeners to this podcast, but if you do listen to it, like check out the report. You can just look it up on the UEFA website. The name of the report is the European Club Finance and Investment Landscape Report. It's actually super interesting and has a lot of details about like all the top clubs and all these different metrics, like matchday revenue, like jersey sales, all this kind of stuff, including costs. Believe it or not, Chelsea lead in all sorts of cost categories, like all the staff outside of the coaching and the players. It's like the third most expensive in the world. So like all sorts of stuff that is like terrible to see from a Chelsea side. But the one note I wanted to finish this off on was Strasbourg's actually ninth on this list for pre-tax loss. So again, for Blueco to have two of their institutions in the top 10 is like a terrible, terrible look for the owners and the sporting directors at large here. Like, while I am probably more pro sporting directors than most people, and I'm not like super pro sporting director by any mean, I think it is like a huge blemish on them that they're somehow running two organizations this terribly. But let's just move on to an update I wanted to provide from last week's episode, which is that the figures for Chelsea's front of shirt sponsor came in. It's being reported that Chelsea is going to earn $15 million from this front of shirt sponsor until the end of the season, which if you prorate that out for a full season is about $50 million. As a reminder, Chelsea have been holding out time and time again to get a $60 million plus deal, which is what like Liverpool have, for example. They haven't managed to get that in the last 2.5 seasons, and even this kind of compromise deal doesn't touch 60 million. This is at 50, but then this IFS AI sponsor will then become a sponsor of some other sort. It won't be a front of shirt sponsor anymore, but that'll be for $3.5 million for 2 years. So that's just an update on the figures from last week. I know we didn't provide them last week. Now that they came out, I just figured I'd give them. And I think it ties in nicely with this whole financial conversation, given that the front of shirt sponsor is probably our biggest source of missed revenue in the last 2 years. Moving on here, let's talk Champions League draw. This is kind of a huge thing. So Chelsea draw PSG. What are your thoughts? Kick us off.
I mean, you don't love to play one of the best teams in the bracket right off the bat. But at the same time, right, if you want to win it, you're probably going to have to play them eventually. We've kind of had their number. If you look to the Club World Cup, Rosenior's kind of had their number. If you look towards the Strasbourg results from last season. So maybe there's a little bit of confidence there that another team might have, or maybe there's extra motivation for PSG. So it's not looking great, especially considering some of the recent form of, it'll be a good game. I'll be excited to watch. We'll see what happens.
Are you more or less confident going into this game with Maresca or Rosenior at the helm?
That's hard. I think Maresca probably just he more time, for more familiarity. He was able to really pull it together, even if though it was a kind of a single elimination game. Maybe Rosenior with more time could grow into that, but it's still early in his tenure. So I think probably Maresca.
Yeah, no, I think I'd be more confident if we had Maresca. I have a lot of confidence in Rosenior in these prem matches. I know he's still relatively unproven, but the style of play he's brought into the team to play kind of against some of these smaller prem teams or mid-sized clubs, we've been much more on the front foot, and that's kind of what I want. We've dropped a lot of points into Maresca against bad teams because we've played too conservatively. But on the flip side, Maresca has played incredibly well against some of the stronger opposition we've played. And honestly, when we beat PSG this summer, it was a bit of a tactical masterclass. It's not like the players just came and completely outperformed PSG. I mean, the tactical setup was genuinely brilliant and was the reason we won. So of course I'd have more confidence with Maresca leading us right now. But thankfully we do have Rosenior, and it's not like this is a random coach who's never played PSG. He obviously has played PSG while he was in Ligue 1. And his record against PSG, he played them 3 times. He won once, drew once, and lost once. So kind of dead even. You hope that with a better squad like Chelsea, he can pull through. I actually think PSG have not been on the best form lately. They're not even top of Ligue 1 right now. That aside, they've generally been performing substandardly to PSG's general levels. And I think they're going to be without Ruiz this next game, and I think potentially one other midfielder might miss out, but of course we'll probably be missing Cucurella. Overall, I mean, obviously we'd rather have drawn Newcastle. I think it's a much more familiar opponent, a team that I think most people would probably think are worse than Chelsea. And so it was upsetting to, one, be placed on the substantially harder side of the bracket, and then two, draw a tougher opponent. But I think with the Champions League, you gotta play good teams to win. So it's not the end of the world. I'm relatively confident in this. I'm not really dreading this game. I think the only games that I don't think Chelsea can win are against Arsenal and against Bayern. Every other team, I'm not saying we're the favorites, and I'm not saying I'm going in expecting us to win, but I'm not scared of Man City. I'm not scared of Real Madrid. I'm not scared of PSG. They can win, and we might win. I think we're a strong team, despite the fact that we underperform or play dumb or are young or have an inexperienced coach. But some of these teams are underperforming too, right? That's just how it is. But so I'm not really scared. I'm looking forward to this matchup. I really do hope we win because, of course, it'd be nice to double down on our victory from the summer and it not just be a fluky thing. And then, of course, we want to make it further in the Champions League. So one thing that came up this week in relation to this matchup, though, is PSG asked the French Association to reschedule their game that was midweek. So we play Newcastle midweek, and they were set to play Nantes midweek. And that game got rescheduled to April now. So PSG is going to have a full week of rest to play us in the second leg, which is obviously a very unfair sporting advantage for them. It makes sense, right? These different national sporting associations are going to favor their own team and their own league, and they're probably happy to make these accommodate these requests, assuming it doesn't impact the integrity of their own league. And in this case, it doesn't. And so they've just given PSG this complete unfair advantage in my eyes and in UEFA's eyes, and it's something that like the FA would probably never do in the Prem. And so that does give Chelsea a bit of a slight disadvantage. Hopefully it's not something that costs them the game. I mean, PSG are probably the team along with Chelsea that are most fatigued from having played the longest season of all time and having the shortest preseason of all times. Hopefully we win. We'll see how it all shakes out. But so then outside of this matchup, the other things to note were that Real are playing City again. It's now the 5th year in a row they're meeting in the knockout stages. And then Arsenal were somehow handed the easiest path to the final I've ever seen in a Champions League. I think everyone was incredibly upset that they're getting such an easy run at it. I mean, they already were the favorite in a lot of people's eyes, them and Bayern. But the fact that they get to basically cakewalk into the semifinals is genuinely heartbreaking as a Chelsea fan. Like, I need this team to lose more than you could imagine. I would hate for them to have a trophy at the end of this year. So the fact that they're going to have a really good chance at the Champions League, even if they drop the Prem, is just genuinely devastating.
No, you hate to see it. You really do. It feels like everything is aligning in their favor, almost cosmically. If they got the quadruple, it would hurt. But at the same time, on the bright side, this is also the opportunity for them to bottle every single competition, which would be cosmically funny. And so you have to hope for that outcome. I think I want to know. I saw a funny statistic on the City versus Real kind of matchup rivalry going on. That after these games, I think Vinny will have played City more than Masala has in the past 5 years or whatnot, which I think is just ridiculous, but also very funny.
Yeah, it's a weird like twist of fate. It's also just insane how stacked one side of the bracket is versus the other. But it really like does break your heart to see, like you said, everything kind of cosmically lining up for them, including today's game. I like to think the bad guys lose, so fingers crossed that they still kind of manage to drop all these points and lose these games. So here's a question for you before we finish in our looking ahead section to Villa's match on Wednesday, but we discussed at length how Chelsea are now outside looking in to the top 5, how Chelsea desperately need to make champions. And obviously they're still really vying for the Champions League right now, and they're obviously playing for the Prem. I think there's an argument to be made that it's almost beneficial for Chelsea to get knocked out this round so they can fully focus on the Prem. I don't want to say I'm making that argument, but I was thinking about this a lot today. Like, if making the Champions League is that important, which it genuinely is that important, there really could be merit. I'm not saying they're going to drop the games because they're going to drop them on purpose. I'm just saying, like, maybe if we did lose, there would be like a sunny side to this. Maybe we look back at the end of the season and we lose to PSG and we're like, wow, thank God that happened because it gave us the opportunity to focus on the Prem and win those points and close this out and make top 5. On the other hand, obviously winning the whole Champions League is the other way to make the champions again. I don't see that happening, which is why I think this thought pattern is so kind of intriguing. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. Do you see the merit? Like, I see the merit. Like, this might be a good thing to not go deeper in the Champions.
Yeah, I mean, I see the logic. It's loser mentality, right? 100%. I want to win every game, but I totally see the logic. You know, if we're looking at making it to the next stage of Champions League versus making Champions League at all next season, obviously you'd pick making it next season. I think you're leaving out kind of almost the equally likely option there, where we get knocked out this next round, and then we focus on Champions League, and we still don't make it because we get more red cards, and suddenly we've lost everything, right? And so, that's something you want to play for. But totally see the logic. If you could guarantee that, you know, we're talking to the genie, and he says you can trade losing to PSG to make the Champions League, I think you take that deal just because it's so important financially, but it doesn't feel good.
But so with that, we will wrap up here with looking ahead to Villa on Wednesday. I know we've discussed this briefly in the last episode. Villa got to play on Friday. We played today. We're going to have 2 days less rest in Villa and go play away. How are you feeling about the game on Wednesday? What do you think is the importance of it? What do you expect the starting lineup to look like? Give me all your thoughts.
I think this might be kind of the most important game we have left, truthfully. You know, you mentioned it at the beginning. Villa kind of is the most vulnerable of the teams, maybe in the top 5 that we can try and steal the place from. They've had a recent tough run of form, like you've said. The XG demon has come back to bite them. I don't know if you've seen kind of the feud between sort of the whole entire Aston Villa team and XG philosophy online, but it's funny that they're trying to pick a fight with basically a statistic, and clearly it's shaping up. So I'm hoping to get a little revenge this game. I think we probably try and play our best guys, right? Best on best. I don't think Rosenior tries to shake up the starting lineup too much. I don't think he does any like tricky back three shenanigans or anything like that. Back five shenanigans. And we'll see. The biggest issue is just kind of the fatigue. And see if they'll be well rested enough given the Sunday's game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do actually think the biggest factor in this game is going to be fatigue, this lack of rest for the Chelsea squad. I think we go general starters. I'm not sure if Sarr gets to play again. We probably should have given him flowers in this Arsenal game just for the fact that he was so uninvolved that that's actually a positive if you're debuting against the top team in the Prem, right? If your name's not being mentioned, that's actually a good thing. So I think we see Chalobah again. I think we see Reece. Or you know what? I hope we see Reece. I don't know that we see Reece because I don't know how his fitness is looking right now. I think Hato probably gets the chance to start again. So I don't know if there's any rotation in that back line. I assume our three midfielders will be the same. I guess like the real gaping hole is going to be that Pedro Neto's obviously out for this game, which means you're starting Garnacho because I'm going to assume Esteval's still out, which we still don't know. It's completely unconfirmed if he's playing or not. It's even unconfirmed really what he has. They said it's like a small niggle of the hamstring, but they never gave a timeline on it, so we just really don't know what's coming back. What that means is we're going to start Palmer and Garnacho on the wings and have no wing depth on the bench, which makes me assume Jesse Derry could get a spot on the bench this next week. But again, that doesn't fill you up with hope when at the beginning of the season we're spending all this cash to buy all these players, and you get to the end of the season and your first choice off the bench at the winger position is an 18-year-old kid. But Villa are on a bad run of form right now. Like you said, XG Demons just catching up to them. We are going to be playing away, so it's a little nerve-wracking. I think we can come away with a win, frankly. Like, I genuinely believe we can beat them. Villa's not like a team I'm scared of. I think they're kind of like at the level. So like, on any given day, it's their game or our game. But I think we can win. I don't think this is the most important game in the run-in, but it's probably top two. It's like this one and the Man United game. What I will say is if we beat Villa, I think we have a really good chance of making top five. If we tie Villa, it's still going to be a toss-up, like 50-50. If we lose to Villa, I think it is going to start becoming a actual long shot we make top five. I think if we lose to Villa, we're now 9 points behind them. It's just a lot of ground to cover. And again, we might be 9 points behind Villa and still only be like 5 or 6 behind Liverpool. So maybe we need to try to catch up to them. But again, I think the most likely teams to fall out of top five are probably in order Villa, then Man U, who have been on a ridiculous run of form and like cannot just win every game under Michael Carrick, and then Liverpool. So hopefully Villa don't come to play. Hopefully our guys are rested up enough. We do have Wrexham on the weekend, so there is a rotation opportunity coming up. So we can just give the starters like a week off, or at least some of them, right? Because we don't have the depth to rest everybody. But we'll see how Chelsea perform this Wednesday. Fingers crossed on a good result. We won't have an episode after Villa on Wednesday. It'll probably be a weekend episode, the cadence we're going to stick to going forward. So any closing thoughts here, John, before we wrap up?
No, I think overall just a little disappointed. They have been a really good run of form under Rosenior. Do we continue that as long as we shape off some of the discipline issues? And
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how everything plays out from now to the end of the season to see if Rosenior is a truly capable manager. Does our luck turn up? Do we stop getting red cards? There's obviously a lot to assess. Feels like there's a lot of games left to play. There's really not. So we will see how it all kind of pans out here. But with that, thank you everyone for joining us for episode 2 of Tiki Taka, a Chelsea FC podcast. And we look forward for you joining us next week.